We've gone a bit over time, but we still have enough time for 2 more questions. The next is from Anthony Galloway.
Thank you. Anthony Galloway from Capital Brief. You've declared we're moving from a balanced defence force to a focused one, and you also mentioned that projecting deterrence isn't just about doing it from our coastline, but much further from home. Does a lot of this plan, is a lot of this plan predicated on the United States remaining deeply engaged in East Asia? And what are the contingencies with the capabilities that we're committing to here for a much more complex region in which the US has disengaged, and it's not about forward defence in the Taiwan Strait or South China Sea, it's about projecting deterrence much closer to home?
Good question. So I think the starting point is, what we've tried to do is the foundational thinking around what is it that is our challenge, what job do we need our Defence Force to do, and what sort of an ADF do we need to have in order to do it? Like that's the pretty simple stuff, but that is the process that we have tried to work through. What we see is that we have a deep economic connection to the world, which has a physical manifestation to it. Our sea trade. The example that I gave in the main speech really does try to describe that we have vulnerabilities associated with those sea lines of communication, which is actually the main game for us, much more than it is to be thinking about any invasion of the Australian continent. So the job our Defence Force needs to do is to be focused on that. That and the fact that when you look at our economic connection, it is largely with our region, and so the stability of our region is at both the heart of our national prosperity and our national security. And so again, a job of the Australian Defence Force is to contribute to the collective security of our region. Now, both those things are well beyond our shoreline. Both those things require us to have a capacity to project, and it's off the back of that that you then see all the decisions that we have made in terms of the kind of Defence Force that we are seeking to build. But on top of all of that, to go, I think, to the nub of your question, the assessment, the strategic assessment of what the world looks like over the next decade and beyond is that it becomes precarious and less certain in every respect. And so what we need is a dramatic transformation in our capability in order to meet that. That's why we are talking about investing so much money in our defence. That's why we are talking about growing our defence budget in historic terms. That's why we've actually made the decisions to commit real money, not fantasy money, to that endeavour. It is precisely so that we can have genuine Australian capability to be able to meet that moment in that time frame. And that is what we are trying to do, becoming a much more capable, self-reliant country, and that starts with the investment and funding decisions that we've made.
A last and very quick question, I'm afraid. The next one is Melissa Code.
Thank you, Minister. Melissa Code from the Mandarin. Thank you for illuminating some of the geostrategic requirements that Australia's national security faces. Given the national crisis that the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide also underscores, can you please tell us if this Labor government would be prepared to entertain the idea of independent oversight of suicidality and rates of suicide in defence, even if the defence and ADF bureaucracy don't believe that's the best way forward?
Thank you for that question. Look, we're obviously aware that this is an idea which the Royal Commission itself is thinking very carefully about, and they've spoken publicly about that, and I think spoken publicly about it here. And the short answer really to this question is that we are going to look very carefully at the recommendations that are made by the Royal Commission. We are very open to the recommendations that will be made by the Royal Commission clearly. In fact, more than that, we are committed to implementing the thrusts of those recommendations. But in relation to that specifically, we are open to this idea, as I said to the Royal Commission itself. But I don't seek to answer it conclusively now, because I think the right thing to do is to actually see what the Royal Commission has to say, look at the model that it proposes, the rationale that it puts forward for that, and we'll give that very careful and due consideration.
Thank you. Now, we've covered plenty of ground there, and I will skip the longer wrap-up. I think suffice to say at this point, please join me in thanking Richard Marles.